Welcome back. And yes, today has been a truly uplifting, inspirational segment, changes of narratives as well. And it continues. So today I'm very pleased to announce I have Rumana Mangera, and this is on the back of last week's interview regarding infertility as well as the stress and the anxiety and the trauma uh, during the process of infertility, so the in vitro process as well as the hopes waiting, and then also the disappointment when it doesn't work, the fertility process is unsuccessful, and then to retry, and then the financial implications and cost, and how long do you continue on this path of trying and hoping, and then uh, feelings of despair, anxiety, pressure and strain on the couple, also the family. So I had then told my producer, we have a different journey because it was actually close to home in that my sister Rumana Patel Mangera, who was in the situation where her husband, well, she's going to tell us a story regarding her husband who had cancer, and then they went the process of in vitro. It did not work, but then she chose an alternate that changed not only her course of her life, but our lives. I was blessed because I'm part of that lived experience and this opportunity to love two really special individuals. And this was to also open up, considering if you're in the situation and if you tried and it was you were unsuccessful with your infertility process, then maybe it's a good time to consider adoptions. And also, I've got Frieda Tanton joining us. She's a manager and consultant at Abba Adoptions, and she will provide an insight in terms of the process if anybody is thinking or would like to adopt. So let me welcome both Rumana and Frieda. Assalamu alaikum, Rumana. And yes, it's a first for me interviewing my beloved sister on air and this capacity. So, assalamu alaikum and welcome to Salam Media.
Walaikum salam, Mariam. It's nice to join you. And yes, it's the first time engaging with you on this platform.
And and thank you, Frieda, for joining us. Frieda Tenton of Abba Adoption Consulting. So, Rumana, let me start with you. As I've mentioned in my introduction, you got married actually when you met Ridwan. Just tell us a little bit of our story. Couple of weeks after you had met, Ridwan had then developed cancer.
Yes, so Mariam, as you've mentioned, I'd only known Ridwan for maybe 3 or 4 weeks when he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I think for me, just coming into his life at that point in time, I always like to say, yeah, I'm the one that saved you, because we just, he was going through a very stressful time in his life. He was only 28 years old, and to be given this diagnosis was devastating for him. And I think I came in at the right time, and I was there as a distraction, if you could say. And that's how our journey began. And obviously, he went for chemotherapy, and one of the procedures he had to undergo was a stem cell transplant. And subsequently, we married within, I think, about 5 months of this diagnosis. And we always knew one of the side effects of chemotherapy would be this, where he would be infertile, and we may or may not be able to have our biological children. But I mean, that was not one of the reasons or distractors for us even being together and getting married. So, I mean, that's how our journey began.
And then into your marriage, you then decided, obviously, that you'd like to start a family now. And then there was difficulty in terms of you conceiving. And then obviously you met with a fertility specialist. So tell us about that.
Okay, yes. So, I mean, we always knew, even with meeting with a fertility specialist, that this would be a long shot. We tried, and in fact, the first fertility specialist was in Durban that we met with. And firstly, they had told us that this would be like a maybe 90% chance, I mean, well, 10% chance of success. However, we thought, you know what, let's give it a try because we don't want to then later have any regrets. So we went along the journey, as I'm sure you've heard in your previous shows about the trauma that in vitro fertility, the whole journey is. I mean, firstly, they pump you up with a whole lot of hormones. You're not in your right frame of mind. And then at the back of your mind, you've still got this niggling feeling that, you know what, even though you're going through all this, it might not work. And so, I mean, once I took all the hormones on my husband's side. They tried to obviously see if there was anything they could salvage on his part so that we could actually fertilize. The surprising thing is that they had managed to fertilize one embryo in the whole process. However, when they transplanted the embryo back into me, within 10 days, I mean, we have this 10-day wait, which is, I think, the most traumatic period of your life. And it didn't take. So, the whole trauma around not taking and that, I think for me, it was just too much to handle. However, we decided to give it one more try. And then we met with a fertility specialist down in Johannesburg. And in this instance, two eggs actually, embryos fertilized. However, again, after the 10 days wait, it didn't take. And at that point in time, both Ridwan and I decided that's it for the biological route. However, we always wanted, our end goal was to be parents. It didn't matter whether it was a biological or another way. We still wanted to be parents. And that's when we made this decision that we're going to go the adoption route.
I love what you said, because for many parents, it's that you want to be parents, but like you say, your end goal is parents, not whether it's biological or a different route, because children are there to love. I mean, that's the nature of children. You see a newborn baby, you might have 4 children, and then you hold this and you feel broody, because just that's what I see Frieda there, and she's smiling because that's what children do. They're just full of love, just looking at them. If you have a really difficult day and you just look at the baby and you hold the baby and everything calms down, they ground you. That's the power of children that has. And I love what you said, because that was your long-term goal, is to raise children, to offer that love and support. So tell me, Rumana, when you think of adoption, you think it's a difficult process. I mean, you might be, there are questions to say, will I be able to love a child that I didn't give birth to, that's not my blood, or that's not biological? Did you have those questions or those conversations to yourself and with Ridwan in terms of, will you have a capacity to love another that is not a biological child, not your blood?
So, to be quite honest, that thought never ever crossed my mind. I suppose, I had so many nieces and nephews, and I just love children. I mean, your kids, for instance, I mean, I practically raised them. And so for me, it was not even.
Spoil them, not raise them, spoil,
Yeah, yeah.
indulge them.
So for me, it was never a question of whether I'd be able to love. I mean, like I say, I've had lots of nieces and nephews that I would look after. And it was, like I say, for me, love, I mean, it would come naturally. I knew it. And like I say, my end goal, if your end goal is to be a parent, and more specifically in my case, to be a mother, then the love comes naturally. That's much I can tell you.
So I know. So tell us a bit. That's why I brought Frieda on, because I mean, Farah is now how old?
She'll be 11 in
So
December.
your process started 13 years ago. So and that's why Frieda here, because I'm sure things have probably changed. Maybe better legislation has come on, a new legislation. But just tell us, was that process for you a strenuous process, and also the time price of that? If you can just briefly explain to us your experience with the adoption process.
Sure. I mean, I won't lie to you, it was a laborious process. I mean, first, we obviously had to, we went the private adoption route. So I had to touch base, I mean, meet up with a social worker who was a private social worker who was going to facilitate the whole process for me. So on the obviously when once we started there was screening sessions, counseling sessions, which took many months because I mean it's not, you can't just place a child with anybody. The first social worker needs to determine whether you are going to be this environment that the child is going to be raised in will be a suitable environment to actually raise a child. And in a way, I think my kids are so privileged because normally with biological children, they don't have a choice. They're born into this and be it bad, good or bad, that's it. That's where they live. But thus, the social worker takes so much time in getting to know the couple, understanding their relationship. I mean, we had to take these marital questionnaire type of things, have sessions. I mean, before we were actually placed on the list to be able to adopt, they do background checks on you. You've got to get police clearance certificates. You've got to undertake medical examinations. So there was this whole process, which I would think was about a year process before we were on the list to be able to adopt.
Okay. And I love what you said, Rumana. It's true because so children who are adopted are actually quite fortunate because, I mean, they clear to see if you will be a fit parent. You've passed
Absolutely.
all this in terms of will you be a match for them. So, that's a great positive that I also have overlooked in the process of this discussion. And then tell me your excitement because I was with you because you were planning to actually adopt from overseas, and then it was just a month before it was taking time, and you're waiting and we're all waiting, and then a month before that you met with the social worker and she just mentioned to you that there is a mother who is based in another province, and she's going to have the baby, but for financial reasons she cannot afford to keep this baby, and it was just offered to you that you are a match, would you be interested? And that just changed your way of thinking because you were planning to go overseas and you're waiting, and then suddenly this new proposition came to you and this new avenue came to you. And tell us, I think within a week you had decided it's
Yeah.
fine, you'll go. And then I remember you phoning me on a Sunday morning and just tell us, and this is 3 weeks after, so a month before that, and then 3 weeks after, you phoned me on a Sunday morning. I can still remember the day. And can you just discuss with the listeners what was the call about?
Okay, so initially, I think, the overseas route was more, I mean, the more criteria you have in terms of what type of child you want to adopt, the more difficult it is. And I mean, initially, we thought, okay, fine, I think we were very, I suppose, naive, or I won't even say that, but I mean, we were not open. We didn't explore the idea of a mixed race baby. And so we had this like set criteria. We wanted this type, and it's next to near impossible, especially if you wanted an Indian baby. So then Ridwan and I got thinking, and we thought, does it really matter what race? And really, then the more we thought about it, we thought, you know what, it's fine. Let's open up to anything. So that's when we discussed with the social worker that we'd be okay with a mixed race baby. And then you won't believe it, within, sure, Miriam's talking month, it wasn't even a month. A month when I told her that we'd be open to this. And then within 3 weeks, she called me on a Tuesday, I remember, to just discuss some things. She didn't mention anything. And when we met at her office, she said, right now, are you ready for this? And she had actually shown our profile to a prospective mother, and the mother liked, in the profile we had pictures of the family and pictures of Miriam's children and my brother's kids and Ridwan's brother's kids and just the environment in which we live. And the mother was really interested, and she then said she chose us, and the social worker wanted to know if we'd be interested. And then Ridwan and I said, yes, no problem. Well, then she told me, well, then in that case, I guess the next step for you is to start preparing because this baby can be born anytime. And that was Tuesday. And Sunday morning, I got a call from the social worker to say that the mother is going into labor and she was from Cape Town and we best make our way to Cape Town. And that's how quick we got my son Yusha.
Yes, and Yusha was born, and I think his first baby bath took place in the hotel room, because I mean, you're from Cape Town, you booked in a hotel, you took him, and I remember how nervous I was, and I sent a good friend of mine who was like I regard as sister to say, I'm not there to support my sister. Can you please go and you can assist her? So basically, uh, you Yusha was given to you, and I always say not given but gifted to you. Just hours after he was born. I mean, once they've checked he's healthy, his FGA scores were good, and he was okay to be discharged. You held a newborn baby in your hand.
Absolutely. So, I mean, he was born 8 o'clock in the evening. And the unfortunate thing was we were not there for the birth because our flight was delayed. So we only reached, our flight was meant to take off at 6 o'clock that evening. However, it got delayed and we only reached Cape Town at about 3 o'clock in the morning. We had no accommodation or anything like that. So we just hired a car. And the social worker told us we can come to the hospital at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we just parked outside the Somerset Hospital where he was born, waiting for us to go through. And then, as you rightly mentioned, we got there. The one thing I have to say, for Somerset Hospital being a government hospital, they were absolutely wonderful. They were wonderful to the birth mother. They were amazing. The pediatrician, the social workers there, for in the nurses. They were just so warm and so welcoming. In terms of when I got Yusha, I didn't know how to feed or what should I do. The nurses sat with me, showing me what to do. The pediatrician came, examined him, and then also administered the I think it's the booster, the BCG that you need, or one of these immunizations that you need to do. Did that for me, and then the social worker was also the hospital appointed social worker was there as well, just to talk to us and that. So it was just an amazing experience. And like I say, for a government hospital, I must commend them. It was just wonderful. And then yes, and then they discharged Yusha into our care. We, in the meantime, scrambled to get a hotel room. So then we took Yusha to the hotel room, and then we had to wait there until we got clearance from the court to remove Yusha from the province. And that my social worker was facilitating in the meantime.
And I remember you told me when Yusha was officially handed, you had to go to court about 6 months later, and then he was declared that you were his parents. And you said, please, can you recount what the magistrate told you, hence, because you had raised now Yusha from birth?
So, I mean, that process, obviously, like you mentioned, it took, I think, yeah, it was 6 months, because at that time, there was that 90-day period that you can't do anything because the biological mother has opportunity to change her mind. And one thing I must say, like normally the social workers don't like to place the child during that 90-day period because it's very traumatic if the mother changes her mind. However, I think with the social worker, she's been doing it for so many years, and she had screened the mother like she had screened myself and Ridwan, and she was 99% sure that the mother would not change her mind. Hence, she placed Yusha with us prior to the 90-day wait. And yeah, so when we had this whole, obviously went to the courts, and then when the adoption was finalized, the social work, I mean, the contents of the document states that you are the children's, the biological, you are the, what can I say, the child's mother, as if you had given birth to it. So yeah,
So
that was an amazing feeling.
on the screen, we have a picture of Farah and Yusha in their school uniform, because Rumana then subsequently made sure that Yusha needed a sibling. A pigeon pair or female was not planned. I mean, she went the route again, and then Farah was a girl. So, yes, she has the best of both, a pigeon pair, so to speak. And that's at my daughter's wedding. Farah and Yusha all kitted out and drop in. I can say from an aunt's point of view, I have biological nieces and nephews, and these are my biological nieces and nephews because I love them wholeheartedly, no different. My father keeps on saying that we were so fortunate that the Almighty has gifted us an opportunity and have given us Farah and Yusha that have enriched our lives, and that's why, from a family perspective, parents out there, if you're struggling with the root of infertility, please do consider adoption route, because really there is no difference. You love them like your own. And that's why I'm going to bring in Frieda, because we time is caught up with us. But just to bring Frieda in to just tell us quickly, is adoption difficult? What are the processes uh, to adopt a baby in 2021? Thank you, Frieda.
Thank you, Mariam. I think Rumana made it so easy for me because she highlighted a couple of things that's actually important to remember. It is it it is a process. If you want to adopt, it's definitely a process. It's not something that takes a day. It does take a bit of a process, and I want to highlight why. Yes, we are looking for suitability, but that suitability is not really just looking whether you are in plain words good enough to raise a baby. It's also getting to know you, to know which child we can actually match with you. And also, it helps with the whole process of knowing, um, whether you have dealt with your losses. Are you ready to adopt a child? Are you ready to be in a place where you can accept this child as your biological child, as if born from you? Because with adopted children, there might be some challenges. There are never any guarantees. And we need to make sure that parents understand that. Um, so that for me is a very important thing. And then added to that, yeah, if you want to adopt, I'm not sure how much time I have, so I'm rushing myself along. Um, if you really want to adopt, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to make an appointment with an adoption specialist and have a conversation and ask the difficult questions, because understanding the process and knowing what it takes from you, what is involved, all the forms you need to apply for, the police clearances, lately also the form 30s, um, that you need to have, so that you can have an understanding of where it fits into the process, why it is necessary, and also ask those questions regarding placing a child at birth. It's something that's not done very often anymore, and the reason for that is specifically because magistrates don't always allow us to get orders to place the children. Also, as Rudwana of Rumana earlier pointed to, is that there's a 60-day period for a mom to change her mind. And lately, we are so focused on the mom and her changing her mind, but we also need to remember that there's always a biological father involved, and we need to do diligence to make sure that there's not a father out there whose rights are being ignored and who's not getting the opportunity to raise his own child because somebody else has decided that he cannot do that. So that has a legal requirement and a certain um, process that we need to follow, where we advertise specifically for the parent if we don't have a name. If we do have a name, we will actually go and see if we can make contact with him, submit him to the counseling process as well, and see if he or she, whether he is willing to um, consent to the adoption, just like the mom as well, or whether he actually want to exercise his rights as a parent. So there are many little things that we need to do, but I think I'm going
Rumana.
to keep it from
Rumana.
Rumana. I actually wrote it down. Rumana keeps opened the door for us to understand that. those things do happen, but it's not run of the mill. One of the other things also that I want to open up is the thing is that you said earlier that they had specific preferences, um, and I deduced from that that initially they wanted to adopt an Indian child, and that's where the overseas process came in. And I just want to highlight that South Africa does not adopt in from other countries. We had a limited agreement with India only at one point, but one cannot go to Russia and adopt a Russian child. We need to adopt our South African children. And from government side, the stance is very clear that there are enough children in our country needing homes, and those are the children we want to provide homes through the adoption process.
Frieda,
Um,
thank you for joining us. I would love to continue, but maybe what I am going to do is I would like to get you on another show solely with you, because there are many questions that I'm sure listeners or parents who are thinking, even parents who have biological children but would like also to adopt in that way. So let me get you on another show to actually ask you all those questions as well. It's been a fascinating discussion. I thank you, Rumana, as well, for joining us and coming out there and giving hope and courage to other parents who have tried the in vitro route and are stressed out regarding the infertility, that there is another avenue, and sharing your story as well. And I can say, from being an aunt to two beautiful children, Farah and Yusha, um, I think you love them more. They just occupy a special space in your heart. And yes, Farah is my favorite from somehow, just my favorite from all. I love them all, but there's just something extra in terms of the love I get from her. So it's a two-way street. I'd like to apologize to all our listeners as well, especially for those of you that are waiting for Nasheed Radio. Nazreen is on standby. But before I leave, speaking about children, Brother Shoaib Musa uh, has sent us this message to say, please remember his son Dawood Musa, who is just 15 years old, is critically ill in hospital on a ventilator, and he's imploring everybody, all the listeners, to please keep him in your duas, keep him in your prayer, and please pray for his complete recovery and shifa. So inshallah, we keep the Musa family in our prayers, in our duas, and may the Almighty grant uh, Dawood Musa complete shifa and recovery from his illness. So with that, I'd like to say it's peace and blessings from me. May you all be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty.